when the saints go marching in.
Vox Fidei brings you into the inner life of the Word made flesh. Father Chris guides us in the lives of the saints in Saintly series.
Welcome to Saintly series. Today, 28th of August, we celebrate St Augustine of HIPPO, Bishop and Doctor of the Church.
It is the feast day of St Augustine of HIPPO, 28th August. A day of celebration too for my parish, St Augustine's Parish, LUGBE, ABUJA. In line with today's feast, the children of the parish share with you the relevance of St Augustine's life in our time. A time when many young people live their lives like Augustine. No wonder he said to God, "You have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find rest in you." And he imagined God saying to him, "Take heart, Augustine, for you will not be seeking me if I had not already found you." Let us meet the kids of our parish community as they share with you his life.
Sancti Michael, Gabriel et Raphael.
St. Augustine was indeed a great man during his time and a model for us today.
Oh yes, no doubt. He has written his name in the annals of world record and heaven has honored him.
I am really happy to be sharing about the life of Augustine. Note that referring to individuals here by their names is not a mark of disrespect, as we shall be referring to him as Augustine from time to time.
Augustine is remarkable for what he did and extraordinary for the things he wrote. He was just an outstanding Christian theologian.
A theologian is a person who systematically studies the being and nature of God, of religion and of religious beliefs.
From one of his writings, we have come to know more about him. A work he titled The Confessions of St. Augustine. He wrote extensively, and his writing did not only influence Christianity but philosophy as well.
Philosophy, from its root word in Greek, philosophia, means the love of wisdom, and a philosopher is thus a lover of wisdom. One of the most famous autobiographies ever written was The Confession of St. Augustine. It inspired so many to conversion and true happiness for over 1,000 years, until books like The Imitation of Christ were known.
What a learned man Augustine was. He was both a philosopher and a theologian at the same time. He must have been involved in deep reflection and meditation as he read. This intelligent and smart scholar was raised by the African soil.
Augustine was born on 20th of November, 354 AD, in the town of Tagast, a place now called Souk Aras in Algeria. He was the first son of St. Monica, whose feast day we celebrated yesterday.
Does that not send chills down your spine? Yesterday was the mother's feast day as a saint, and today is that of the son. This is amazing.
It means she had strong influence over him.
Oh yes, she had. But obviously, anyone who wants to stray will not be ready to listen to any wise counsel.
His father was a pagan named Patricius. They were not rich people. They struggled with their mega resources, sometimes even borrow, to obtain quality education for Augustine.
Monica also prayed fervently for the conversion of her husband, and shortly before his death, he was converted.
His mother wanted him baptized as a growing boy, but his father refused. When Augustine took ill, for fear of him dying without baptism, his mother insisted on having him enrolled for baptism, and his father reluctantly accepted, and he was enrolled as a catechumen. But as soon as he was well, his father withdrew his consent, and young Augustine could not continue with preparation for baptism.
He had a brother called Navigius and a sister called Perpetua who became a nun. Augustine seemed to have been the only child sent to be highly educated. He studied first in his native town of Tagast and then in a nearby university town of Madaras. and finally studied in the big city of Carthage, the great city of Roman Africa. This was at the age of 19.
Of course, this was during the reign of the great Roman Empire, covering the areas of the ancient city of Rome, Europe, Britain, parts of Asia, Northern Africa, Rome, the land of the Caesars.
This makes it one of the most powerful civilizations in world history, lasting over 1,000 years.
As soon as St Augustine got to the university in Carthage, his father died and he automatically was meant to be the head of the family as the first son.
To the disappointment of his devout mother, Augustine abandoned the solid Christian background she had set for him and had become wayward. But he earned a living by teaching grammar and rhetoric.
The society of his time was corrupt, politically, socially, and morally. He went as far as joining the sect of the Manichaeans and their heretical belief. He spent 10 years of his life with the heretical sect, but was never initiated into the sect. He was only at the lowest level of the sect.
Manichaeism was a sect that originated from Persia in the 3rd century. It was named after its founder, Prophet Mani, also known as the Supreme Illuminator or the Prophet of Light, claiming knowledge of all things through reasoning and the two principles that govern the world, good as light and bad as darkness.
Augustine was also deeply influenced by his friends and their hedonistic lifestyle.
Hedonism is the moral principle that says a thing is right or wrong only if it brings pleasure, sensual pleasure. Therefore, carry out action for the sake of pleasure and pleasure alone. Pleasure is the aim of human life, they say.
This moral principle or style of living makes a god out of pleasure.
Augustine became reckless and disobedient.
I can imagine the kind of things Augustine engaged himself in.
What do you expect of a person who has lost the place for God in his life and begins to seek only sensual pleasure?
His mother did all she could to keep him on track. She even sent him out of the house as he was not ready to change his character, but it wasn't working.
Just like some of us who have become rebellious at home, believing we do not need the pieces of advice of our parents and seniors, and we begin to behave as we like.
He practically, as a teenager, began to destroy himself through fornication and success.
He developed an affair with a young woman from Carthage, who had a son for him, Deodatus, which means gift from God. This was in the year 372 AD. His father was at this time irresponsible and unfaithful to his marriage. He was not even worried about Augustine's immoral behavior. Instead, he was looking forward to having a grandchild. Whether the process was legitimate or not, Monica, on the other hand, was broken but never gave up. She looked after them and prayed for them.
By the way, Augustine, for some reason, decided not to reveal the name of the young woman he was entangled with. He later abandoned her for another young lady whom he desired to marry, but upon finding the path of conversion, he did not continue.
Let us at least commend Augustine and his concubine for having the courage to have kept the baby. Knowing that today, some young people will consider abortion as the way out, especially for social reasons. In some cases, it is to raise the ego and social status of the parents. Abstinence and purity remain the best principles.
Despite his wayward lifestyle, he loved to study and had strong passion for philosophy, rhetoric, and Latin, the language of the learned at that time. He taught at Carthage and later left for Rome, where he believed the bright minds were, and Milan. It was in Milan he met St Ambrose.
When he was to leave for Rome, his mother insisted on relocating with him, but he deceived her and left without her. She saved some money after a while and boarded a ship in search of her son in Rome. By the time she got to Rome, he had already relocated to Milan.
If I no sleep, my mother no go sleep. What a true mother. She would not sleep unless she finds her son.
There are mothers today who are not bothered about the whereabouts of their children. Oh, even fathers as well.
It was in Milan that the life of Augustine knew a new turn.
Augustine arrived in Milan and visited Ambrose, having heard of his reputation as an orator. Ambrose was a master of rhetoric, but older and more experienced than Augustine.
His relationship with Augustine grew strong. Of Ambrose, Augustine said, "And I began to love him not because he was a teacher of the truth, for I had already believed I could not find the truth in your church, but I began to love him because he was a friendly man."
Augustine was very much influenced by Ambrose, even much more than his mother and all those he had admired. He said, "That man of God received me as a father would, and welcomed my coming as a good bishop should." Ambrose adopted Augustine as a spiritual son, since his father had died.
The inspirational homilies and eloquent rhetoric of St. Ambrose, then Bishop of Milan, led Augustine to the path of conversion.
One day, he returned home, ignoring the invitation of the women he would spend his time with. He said to them, "I am no longer the man you used to think I am."
Augustine was inspired by reading about the life of St. Anthony of the Desert.
Anthony of the Desert was a monk who lived in the desert in Egypt. He lived from 251 to 356 AD. He is one of the most widely known desert fathers. When he was about 18 years old, his parents died and left him in the care of his elder sister. Hearing at Mass the word, "If you will be perfect, go, sell what you have and give to the poor," he gave away all his vast possessions, stayed home till his sister's education was completed, and he retired to the desert to spend the rest of his life praying and contemplating God.
Something began to burn in Augustine to pursue for holiness. But it was hard. He even said to God, "Give me chastity, but not now." He was still wanting to hold on to his past life.
When he heard about two men who had unexpectedly converted to Christianity, upon reading the life of St. Anthony of the Desert, he felt horribly ashamed of himself. "What are we doing?" he asked a good friend of his, Alipi. "Unlearned people are taking heaven by storm, while we, with all our knowledge and understanding, are so foolish that we keep rolling around in the mud of our sins."
Watch that intelligence of yours and how to use it. Make sure you carry your intelligence with fully wrapped humility. It can either mold or destroy you. He turned to God, crying, "How long more, O Lord? Why does not this hour put an end to my sins?" Just then, he heard an inner voice like that of a child saying to him, "Take up and read." Thinking God intended him to hear those words, he picked up his Bible and opened to the letters of St. Paul, and read the first passage he opened.
He was drawn to a passage which was aimed at non-believers becoming transformed. The passage Augustine refers to was Romans chapter 13, verse 13 and 14. "Not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make no provision for the flesh to fulfill its lust thereof."
That was it. That was just it. It was what Augustine desired. That was it. Augustine became a new man with a new life. He separated from his concubine whom he had lived with for 15 years.
Despite the fact that she had a son for St. Augustine, he had planned on marrying another woman, but his conversion to Christianity made him to abandon altogether any possibilities of marriage and commit himself to a life of chastity as a celibate.
His restless soul was not finding direction from darkness to light, from worthless pleasure to true happiness. Imagine, he renounced his career and his marriage prospects in order to dedicate his life to God.
Indeed, where there is a will, there is a way. God never gives up on anyone. This became a total new phase to the life of Augustine.
This conversion is total. This is a perfect example of radical conversion, just like St. Paul.
He was baptized in Milan by Bishop Ambrose at the age of 33.
in the year 387 AD at the Easter Vigil with his son and some friends, about 40 of them. Mama Monica, Augustine had been baptized. All his sins, original and venial, had been washed clean. He's now a Christian, child of God, and member of God's church.
A day when Monica's prayers were finally answered. She prayed for his conversion for 32 years. Finally, the seed of her prayers bore fruits. Perseverance is key to God's handiwork in our lives.
He made a profession of faith, renounced sin and Satan with all his empty promises. He accepted to follow Christ in and through the Catholic Church.
Augustine now decided to return to Carthage with his mother and his son and his friends. On their way back to Africa, they were delayed at the coastal city of Ostia Antica, just outside Rome. There, Monica fell ill and died in the hands of her non-Christian son, Augustine, at the age of 56.
I can imagine her at the moment of death, in pain and sickness, yet wearing a smile and saying, "That's my son." Her dream was fulfilled. She was indeed a powerful intercessor.
They returned home to Africa, where his son Adeodatus died shortly after. Augustine gave away his wealth to the poor and turned his home into a monastery for himself and a group of like-minded Christians.
In 391 AD, he was ordained a priest of Hippo, a city now called Annaba in Algeria. He became a famous preacher, and over 350 of his sermons have survived till today.
He was noted for opposing the Manichaean religion, which he had formerly followed. In 395 AD, he was made coadjutor bishop of Hippo and became full bishop shortly thereafter. Hence the name Augustine of Hippo. He gave his property to the church of Tagast. He remained in that position until his death in 430 AD. Augustine was very influential on the development of Christianity.
Augustine worked tirelessly to convince the people of Hippo to convert to Christianity. Though he had left the monastery, he continued to lead a monastic life in the episcopal residence.
Augustine was just a man of powerful intellect and an inspiring orator who took every opportunity to defend Christianity against its critics and enemies.
His friend Posidonius described him so well when he said, Augustine was a man who ate sparingly, worked tirelessly, despised gossip, shunned the temptation of the flesh, and exercised prudence in the financial stewardship of his diocese.
In 391 AD, he became the bishop of Hippo, and for the next 39 years became an influential preacher, often speaking against his former religion of Manichaeism.
He became a Christian at 33, a priest at 36, a bishop at 41.
In the last half of his life, Augustine was noted for his piety, shunning his former hedonistic lifestyle and living a life of simplicity and devotion.
He also continued to write. His important works included his autobiographical confession titled The Confession of St Augustine. Also, he wrote City of God, which was written in response to the sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 AD. Here he argued, the real religion is in spirit and not in temporal cities and religion of the world.
The Visigoths were a group of Germans, popularly known as the Goths. They lived at a time known as the Migration Period. They attacked Rome in the 5th century. This was a step that led to the fall of the Roman Empire. Even though at that time, Rome was no longer the capital of the Western Roman Empire, Ravenna was the capital. Yet, the city of Rome remained a supreme place as the eternal city and a spiritual center for the empire.
In the spring of 430 AD, the Vandals, who previously sacked Rome, attacked the part of Africa that was under the Roman Empire. Augustine fell ill and died on 28th of August 430 AD. The Vandals returned to Hippo and bought much of the city, though Augustine's library survived.
He was canonized in 1298 AD by Pope Boniface VIII. The remains of Augustine are in the Basilica of San Pietro in Ciel di Oro. In the Middle Ages, the dome of the church was covered in gold. Hence, the name of the church, St. Peter in Heaven, clothed in gold.
And one of the chapels in the Basilica of St Augustine is dedicated to his mother, St Monica. This is the story of the sinner turned saint.
He is the patron saint of brewers, printers, theologians, and of my parish. He is evoked against sore eyes.
The life of St Augustine tells us that every saint had a past.
The life of St Augustine tells us that every sinner has a future.
Even though the historical accounts of the life of saints paint them as spotless, they were like us, facing everyday struggles.
There is hope for you and I to become saints.
He wasn't ashamed of his past. He confronted his past and was able to share the story in his writing. He encourages those who feel lost, hopeless, and guilty to see that life can turn around through grace, prayers, and making amends.
A morte perpetua, libera-nos Domine.
If you're suffering from a bad man's injustice, forgive him, lest there'll be two bad men.
Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are Anger and Courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are.
He that is kind is free, though he is a slave. He that is evil is a slave, though he may be a king.
The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose, it to defend itself.
To fall in love with God is the greatest romance. To seek Him, the greatest adventure. To find Him, the greatest human achievement.
Where I am terrified by what I am for you, I am given comfort by what I am with you. For you, I am a bishop. With you, after all, I am a Christian. The first is an office undertaken, the second a man of grace. That one means danger, this one salvation.
And this brings an end to the life of St Augustine, as told by the kids of St Augustine's parish, LUGBE, Abuja. I am Agbo Lovett.
ad Evangelii lumen peducere gines, te rogamus audi nos, Christe audi nos, Christe audi nos, Christe exaudi nos, Christe exaudi nos, Ainos Dei, qui tollis peccata mundi, misericors